be the funniest look because this is the setup that we have right now. Obviously, me and Sam are both here in person.
Yeah.
We were going to do it remotely, and then we were like, "Fuck it, let's ball.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it in person in Philadelphia."
Mm-hmm.
Sam is here. What do you think of Philly, Sam?
I love it personally. I would say that like by entering the city, I've built up enough goodwill that if and when the Celtics blow the round 2 series to the Sixers, I should not be mocked or made fun of.
Yes,
because I've come here to pay penitence. I ran up the Rocky stairs. I threw battery at Santa. Well, a man who looked like Santa.
Just combining Philadelphia sports memories in your brain.
Well, JD Drew is sort of a Santa type figure.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's like the second time. All right.
It sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I can't read your name from here because we're so far away from the computer, but I appreciate it. So before we get into anything else, Sam's, how many times have you been to Philly before?
Once before this.
So this is the second time that Sam has been in Philly.
Yeah.
We've decided that if the Celtics do beat the Sixers in the second round, which we're going to talk about, we're going to bring Sam back. We're going to do a large dunk tank where we have a fundraiser event where we can throw things. Right. We can throw eggs and various objects at Sam. So
batteries.
Yeah. So at least we have something else.
And rocks, knives, whatever you can carry in. We're going to have an event.
We will have something to look forward to when the Sixers do inevitably lose in the second round for the straight year.
We're going to do a lot K,
Lot K?
Yeah.
We're going to do a lot of K.
Yeah, we're going to do a lot of K. No, we're gonna do a lot K tailgate, and I will be set up there. And then at the end, I will be ritualistically sacrificed.
Let's go,
man. Yeah,
let's go.
That's what I'm here for.
So we have that to look forward to in the coming weeks.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to Joel Embiid probably winning the MVP this season, so we have a lot of things going on. Before we get into anything else, I just wanted to laugh at my hilarious prediction. If you didn't check out the last episode, we recorded it before the Sixers Celtics game. So we reported it literally just before it happened. And as we do on every episode, we had to do the underdog promo. And the pick for the higher lower on Joel Embiid was 31.5. And he had not hit that in 5 straight games. So I thought, he's definitely going to go lower on that. So I hit that. And then he comes out and he scores 52 points on 20. He hit in the third quarter. I think the beginning of the third quarter, he hit the higher on that. So that shows you just fade my picks from now on. If I ever give advice on the show, fade the picks. Make sure that you're not going with the advice that I'm giving. But you can sign up for Underdog today. Use the $100 promo code SLOP, that's SLOP. You can see it in the corner for Underdog. And so anytime you see my picks on Twitter, fade my picks. Anytime that you see the advice that I give out on the podcast, fade everything. So because you will end up taking home a lot of money. Because I literally haven't hit a pick in like 2 months. I'm not even doing a bit. So
we've been called the Matt Moore of daily fantasy. So let's just say there's a lot of upside to using promo code SLOP and then doing the exact opposite of what we tell you to do. So
2 episodes ago, Sam had Tatum.
Yeah,
and he smashed that in the third quarter. We literally
fucking doomers. These 2 fucking doomers that can't just be nice to their guys.
Oh my god! But yeah. So let's get into the conversation that we want to have about the other night, because obviously the Sixers win the game. Jaylen Brown and Rob Williams did not play, which every single podcast seemed to drive home that I listened to over and over. But it is.
Chris Middleton wasn't playing, and that they played 5 and 7 days. Big same energy. I'm sorry if you lose, you got your ass kicked. It doesn't matter. The Celtics were losing that game even if Jaylen played. I'm sorry.
And I came out of that game obviously it's very conflicting because the fan brain. I know that on Rights to Ricky Sanchez, I didn't listen to the episode, but I heard that they had this argument over the fact that it was like Spike was very we just watched Joel Embiid have one of the most amazing performances I've ever seen. 52 points, 20 of 25 from the field, and Mike was like, "We'll never beat the Celtics." Like it's just he can never.
I've seen this.
I've seen this movie before. We're never going to beat the Celtics. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it locked up MVP for Joel.
It did.
I don't know if it did in the voters' minds. I think in most sane people's minds, in most random fan of basketball, in most whatever, but we are going up against a force that is very strong, which is the nerd media of the NBA, which is looking to do anything still. Kevin Pelton said on the low post, Jokic is still his MVP. He gets a vote. Zach and Bill, to their credit, have both said they think they're voting for Embiid. They think that that's going to be their vote that's locked in. I actually thought Bill, I don't know if you listened to Bill, but he was spitting on, he basically did a section on how these games, these big games matter, like for narrative purposes, like Joel having the Nuggets game, having the Bucks game in Milwaukee, having the Celtics game. Basically, every time he's had a massive, huge game in all of their big games, except for like one or two, and especially since the beginning of the season. And his whole thing was, if you look at the last 5 years of basketball and you say, who are the three best players in the regular season? It's Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid. And Jokic has 2 MVPs. Giannis has 2 MVPs. Joel has 2 runner-ups, but he has none. And he's probably going to get 1 this year. And he was like, you can say that we'll divorce it from playoffs. We'll divorce it from all the other seasons. We'll divorce it from anything, any outside narrative stuff. But it's impossible not to admit that Joel has been one of the 3 best players. And if he didn't win this year, he would be the only one of that grouping that walks away with no MVPs.
Yeah. No, and I think that it's like pretty clear that those 3 guys have been the best players in the league for like at least 3 years, I would say. Like, like I can't think of like you'd have to go back to like the last time Steph Curry was like lights out and healthy. Like I think was the last time that like someone
or LeBron in 1920, I think.
So somewhere in there, But I just, I think that, I mean, I turned to who I was watching the game with, like, in like a fucking New York bar, and I was like, that's it. Embiid just like won the MVP. You 50-burgered on national television against like your hated rivals down the stretch, kept alive that you might have been able to get up to the 2 seed if they like really went diaper mode. Like, that's like just huge game. And just like you said, that was going to be my point coming into this. It's just like every huge game he has been, the Nuggets game, the head-to-head with Jokic, all the other stuff. Like, the only thing I think that could really blow this for him is that how committed to diaper, pants shitting, like being mad at like Daryl Morey and like Joel for daring to complain about it.
Sure.
They're touching the third rail of like making fun of like the MVP voters, like, which is like something you can't do because they're like they're very sensitive. I mean, like I've always given basketball sports writers like a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt than like, for example, baseball like writers are like, some of the worst in the world. But like with like this stuff and what they do with their Hall of Fame votes and everything like that. But like this is like on that level where it's just like, oh, you're not doing it the right way. Like,
sure.
Your instant. It just doesn't help your cause. Like tut-tutting. The Bernie Bros were very rude to me. Like, just.
Oh, that's my cat opening the door. Don't worry about that.
I was like, we've got Dewey in the trap right now.
Dewey wants to be involved in the podcast.
Dewey will be here.
Let's go.
But I just think that. I guess what I would say is like that's the only thing I think that can derail Joel at this point. Like, I would look ahead. I'm almost certainly going to be with my imaginary vote. I would almost certainly vote him MVP. I can't imagine what would need to change these last 2 games of the season.
Yeah,
and no one's going to play. Like everyone's locked in. Yeah.
I said they should play Embiid the last 2 games just so that the Jokic games played argument is completely irrelevant because they will have played the same exact amount of games.
Right.
So if you do that, then there is nothing that you can push back. But then as people pointed out, if he only plays like 5 or 10 minutes in those games just to get the games played, then Luka will win the scoring title probably. So one of Joel's things is that it's going to be the second straight year he's won the scoring title. And he has been the anchor for, when he's on the court at least, a top 5 or 10 defense. When he sits, it's a bit more of a mess, and that continues to be a thing with the Sixers, that when Joel is off the court, the team seemingly falls apart. It seems like they're a little bit better. I think about a month and a half ago, I said on the podcast, they are a little bit. I think I said I don't know if I don't think I would vote for Joel for MVP because the team's too good without him. But I think that the fact that since that comment I made, he's probably played the best basketball of his life for like a month and a half and had these massive performances. This was before the Bucks game. This was before the Warriors game, which honestly, they lost that game to no fault of Joel's. But there's been many examples of why Joel is so important. And I get the Giannis argument because best player, best team. And I get the Jokic argument because statistically he has been incredible. But when you consider all of the context, the big narrative games, the fact Joel's never won one before, the fact that Jokic and Giannis both have 2 already, and the fact that, honestly, Giannis's team performs pretty well without him. Even in the games that he plays, they're about neutral when he sits, and the spike when he's on the court isn't that massive. The Jokic stuff, the net rating stuff, you could argue on his behalf. Here's Dewey. He's saying hello. You could argue on his behalf that, he swings too much in the favor of, the team being so good with him on the court. But also the Nuggets, they don't split up their starters. They have.
He's here. He's hanging out.
For anyone's listening, because Dewey is now sitting on Sam's lap.
That's right.
But
as he should be.
But Jokic, I think a lot of that stuff, it has been the case for him. It's not to take anything away from him, but let's just give it to someone else, okay? I'm fucking sick of it. I'm fucking sick of him winning every goddamn year. And like Nuggets fans and Jokic fans that are like, they're basically now arguing there is no argument to give it to anyone but Jokic because of this and that, blah, blah, blah. It's starting to become very Republican top 1% to me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, only my guy can win.
Right.
This is how it's always been, and this is why he should win. And I think for once they're gonna actually, in my opinion, do the right thing. Give the award to Joel after 2 years of worthy debating over this and people losing their mind. I think that he finally probably will lock up MVP. And also, Brian, I just want to say, Tatum does not have the real scoring title. That's not how it works.
I don't know.
Let's
hear him out. Let's hear him out. Hold on.
I understand he has scored the most points, but I'm just gonna say, too many games played, Merchant.
Too many games played.
Come on, load manage a little bit more. Have some pride, Jason Tatum. Showing up to work every day. Take a vacation, dude.
He's anti-labor king. Jason Tatum Pinkerton. It's middle management scab.
Tatum, look, we're worried about you, bud. We think you're a workaholic.
Yeah. You need to spend some time with your son. We never see anything about your son.
Your son is more popular than you, actually. Yeah. More charismatic.
Yeah. That is, oh man. Just kidding. I'm kidding. Or am I? Who knows?
Impossible to say.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think I'm glad I was able to. It's very funny that we inverted. Remember, when we started this year, I was like, "Yeah, I'm out on." I'm so in on MVP.
Yeah.
You're MVP brain. And you were like, "I'm so glad I don't have to fucking deal with that this year." And then we just totally fucked. Here we are at the end of the fucking.
I was gonna say if he does win, it will all have been worth all the psychosis for 3 straight years. If he somehow doesn't win, the sports books are going to take a fucking bath if he doesn't win, because after that game, his line was like -1,000 to win, and it was like +700 for Jokic and like +1,000 for Giannis.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of want that to happen because I think we're gonna start seeing all of a sudden, like, Zach Lowe has like a FanDuel sponsorship. some Clarence Thomas shit going on in the
What is happening?
in the NBA media. Like, all of a sudden, Kevin Pelton is like dressing really nice. Like, hey, what the fuck's going on?
Oh, okay. After coming out of that Sixers Celtics game, I did have that part of my brain. First off, I just enjoyed the performance. If you watch the stream, by the way, I'm streaming for all the play-in games next week as well. If you want to join me for them, the link is in the description for that on playback. But I was on playback streaming that night. It is just not enjoyable at all for me to watch the Sixers play the Celtics. It isn't enjoyable for me to watch them play good teams, generally speaking. But there is something specific about the Celtics and that matchup where it doesn't really matter what the Sixers do. Like, there was like one possession where the Celtics got 4 rebounds. It feels like every 50-50 ball bounces in the direction of the Celtics. It felt as though the role players, whenever the Sixers role players play the Celtics, it's like, I do understand that it is a tough defensive matchup because the Celtics have so much length and athleticism, and they're just honestly generally good field players on the defensive end. You guys have a really tough defense to score against, but I swear to God, everyone misses all of their open shots. In addition, like Melton, Maxey, Tobias, like everyone forgot how to shoot that night. It was the worst. Third straight time that Maxey struggled against the Celtics. Tobias played maybe his worst offensive game of the season. And then pretty much no one but Joel or Harden. Joel scored more than half of the Sixers' points. And it left me coming out of that game feeling about the same that I felt going in, but a little bit worse from where we talked about it a month ago, where the Celtics cracks were starting to show. And they went on a little bit of a skid. And it felt as though the Sixers could maybe push the Celtics to 6 or 7 games in a series. And I kind of came out of that thinking that if they do inevitably match up in the second round, which it looks like they're going to, I don't really take much from the Sixers Heat game that happened last night. The Sixers had way less to play for than the Heat. It sounds like they're going to play the Nets in the first round. It sounds like the Celtics are probably going to play the Heat in the first round, assuming that they win their play-in game. I came out of that kind of thinking exactly what I thought before, which is that the Celtics are still a bad matchup for the Sixers. The Celtics have more depth than they had before, and that's always been something that's been in the favor of the Celtics to begin with. And then the third thing for me is that I feel like outside of Joel, there's really no one that you know that you can rely on in a Celtics series to kind of get them over the hump and beat them. So I'm coming out of it feeling as though I feel less likely that the series is going to go the distance. I still feel like it will be a competitive series, but I think right now, if I had to make a pick, I'm not writing it in pen, but I would probably go Celtics in 6 in that second round. So I know you're going to say you're going to try not to jinx the Celtics here.
I don't know. I mean, it's so like an earnest analysis. Like, I'm not even doing a bit though. The Celtics are. I mean, the reason the Celtics lost that game against the Sixers is because they didn't hit 3-point shots. You know? And the reason that they blew out the Bucks is because they hit a shitload of 3-point shots. They are a team that is like especially, I guess, kind of at the mercy of shooting variance. You know, like even more so than a lot of other teams. Like that's kind of Joe Masula's thing, is like leaning really into the shooting variance and making the bet that that's gonna help you more than it hurts you in the long run. But it does open up the Celtics to diaper disasters. It opens the Celtics up to other things. I'll also say, like, especially when Rob Williams is not in the game, and honestly, even when he's in the game, Joel is a uniquely bad matchup for the Celtics. The Celtics can even kind of figure out Jokic. That's anecdotal. I mean, I'm sure Jokic has averages 25 something, you know, whatever. But I'm just from what I look. Joel has the easiest time against the Celtics defense of any player that we play. Like it's always been that way. The only times when he's kind of struggled is when he's been like kind of like fucking hurt. And like we've talked about this. Like he's the rare giant bruising big that like really gives Rob Williams a lot of trouble. The Celtics have really relied on Al Horford to kind of control that matchup. And if, Al Horford is in foul trouble or doesn't have it that night, which is what happened like in that game, then you're stuck with like, why the fuck is Luke Cornett out there? And then it's just, I know Joel is good. This is it. What do you, this is kind of like complaining about like, a roll of toilet paper didn't do a good enough job, like slowing down the train. You know what I'm saying? Like when you put it on the tracks, but I just think that the Sixers have, if Joel's healthy, they will probably have the best player on the floor. I would say in at least 4 out of the 7 games. The Celtics will kind of be at the mercy of the shooting variance. And, I'm just not, I still feel pretty good about the Celtics, but there is downside there, like the same way there's upside there. Like you could tell me the Celtics win 16-2 in the playoffs and I'd be like, checks out. You could tell me they went to a game 7 against the fucking Hawks because they got cold in round 1. And I'd be like, yeah.
I've been pretty surprised with the Hawks. The Heat, maybe not, but the Hawks, I think the Hawks are just... I know you're still hanging on to
I'm hanging on. Yeah.
Hanging on to the
hanging on for dear life. It's bad. It's bad, though. They're...
But the one thing I will say is, I came out of that game feeling as though everything kind of went wrong for both teams outside of a few things. In terms of offensive process, I thought for the Celtics was good. I thought that Tatum's numbers, he always struggles in the Sixers games.
Every game, yeah.
Every game since the first game of the season, he struggled against the Sixers. But it seems like he's been reading when the double teams are coming and getting the ball out, which is leading to open threes. As you said, the variance thing is, the variance thing is always part of the process, but the amount of open shots that the Celtics got was a good sign for the Celtics offense. The almost near collapse for the Sixers at the end was, a little bit of bad reffing, a little bit of just the Sixers kind of having their own diaper disaster.
I'll say it. It was a lot of bad reffing. It was a lot of bad reffing.
And then Grant Williams was complaining about the refs when he flopped on that play. I was like, what? And he was complaining that they didn't get a flagrant. But long story short here, there was a lot of bad reffing down the stretch. But the actual game itself, when they were playing, it felt like the Celtics did get a lot of open shots, and it felt like they were able to say, okay, we're going to give Embiid as many 2-point looks as you want. The Bucks kind of did the same thing. We're going to give Embiid jump shots. We're going to make sure he doesn't get to the line as much, and we're going to make sure he doesn't get into the paint as much. And when that is the case, it does feel as though that
so true, Dewey.
Yeah, my cats are going buck wild. They're very excited. Sam's here.
Yeah, let's go.
But it does feel as though that is kind of like what I'm trying to get at here is like the Sixers have a little bit of a role player depth problem, but they also have a 3-point variance problem of their own where they don't take enough threes because their role players are basically completely reliant on Joel setting them up. That the PJ Tucker shots at the end ended up being the difference when the Celtics were willing to give Joel those shots in the mid-range. They were willing to let 2 points almost every single possession because they knew that the numbers would favor, if they started hitting their open shots, they would get enough open threes and rim attempts and free throws that it would eventually balance back in their direction. I think that when the Celtics are fully healthy, they still have the best 1 through 8 in the league, which I've talked a lot about, but all of this comes down to is if Maxey is I'm worried about Harden for sure. He's not looked like the same for about 2 or 3 weeks now. And I don't know if it's the injury or if it's just kind of James Harden entering this mode that he seems to go into sometimes around the playoffs. But the Maxey and Tobias thing is massive because the Sixers already have depth issues. And then the Celtics don't have those same depth issues in terms of you guys can bring Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White off the bench. The Sixers are still relying on players who are either unproven, especially in the playoffs, or they're just unplayable, like George Niang, who should never see the floor in a Celtics game like he did the other night. And if Maxey, Melton, and Tobias play the way they did the other night, they have basically no chance to win that series. Like they need more out of those guys in order to counteract some of the stuff. We always talk about like the way that you can really mess up the Celtics offense is to put ball pressure, play the passing lanes because you can get a ton of turnovers and get runouts, right?
Right. No.
The Sixers just don't really play that many guys that cause turnovers.
Yeah.
Melton is really the only one that's like McDaniels and Reed sometimes, but their Doc doesn't trust them, and they're not going to play in the same amount that Melton is going to play, and it feels like no one else can really cause turnovers on this team.
I mean, that's kind of why Thibault was like such an important player for you guys when you guys would play the Celtics.
He closed the last Celtics game before he got traded.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think it was the right decision because he is good at like kind of that free safety style of weak side defense, like kind of creating turnovers and creating runouts. So I'm still really surprised you guys. I mean, I guess you did get McDaniels through that like chain of transactions, who I think is a better player. So like,
I've actually been fine with McDaniels' offense recently. It's his defense, like, and Russillo was spot on when he talked about this on Bill's podcast. Yeah. He makes some really dumb ass decisions. Like he fouled Luka 80 feet away from the basket at the end of the third quarter in the Mavericks game like a week ago. And part of me is like, damn, maybe Bill and Chiodo really with the never having played in big games thing. Mm-hmm. So when you get into these matchups, you don't know things like that, like when you're guarding the opposing star player, which he's not accustomed to all the time, that they're going to try to bait you into stupid shit because you don't know what you're doing in that moment. He hasn't really had, and it seems like the coaching staff, for some reason, his three's been falling recently. He's been able to attack closeouts. He can get extra possessions with some rebounds sometimes, but it doesn't really feel like this coaching staff fully trusts him in a way that they kind of need to, because like there's no way Niang could ever play. Yeah. And even like as good as PJ Tucker was to close that game the other night, there's going to be times in the playoffs where Tucker and Tobias are struggling. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, great. Your wing rotation is unproven McDaniels, half-washed PJ Tucker, and Tobias, who was great for 2 months this season and has just been wildly inconsistent recently. So put that up against probably the best wing rotation in the NBA, and you're not going to
it's not ideal. No.
Yeah. And that's the advantage that you always talk about with the Celtics.
Right. I mean, I think that is the Celtics. You know, I want to be clear. I don't think that is a weakness that's unique to like every. You know, I don't think it's a weakness unique to the Sixers batting structure. They imagine. Bucks fans complain about this too. Like, Grayson Allen is not good enough to guard Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Sorry. Like
most guys aren't.
Most guys aren't. Like, you know, like what am I? I'm gonna complain that like Grant Williams doesn't stop Giannis 100% of the time. Like that's the baked in advantage. You know.
And also Jaylen Brown being out the other night, as we said before. Yeah. I was like, "Fuck, Jaylen Brown is out before," because I was like, "You guys always compete more when you're missing guys," and then on top of that, Derek White has been fantastic in every game against the Sixers. He's
been just good this. Like, he's spoiler alert. I think he's a first team all defense guard. Like for sure. He's been incredible. I am begging him to continue that and not do what he did last playoffs. This is all I'm asking for.
Derek, if you're watching,
please don't. Do not
go back on the JJ Redick podcast.
No, do not do that. Stay away from JJ Redick. You don't need to. Don't have him explain. Don't have him explain to you what Riz is or something like that. Any explanations JJ Redick is trying to give you, you tune those out. You stay doing what you're doing.
Oh, please, Derek. Please, for my sake.
No.
For my sake, please. Just shoot JJ a text. Ask him.
Go back on.
Ask him about some sort of other mental disorder.
Yeah. Ask him about. I was gonna say like what's another imposter syndrome?
Ask him about chronic anxiety disorder.
Yeah. Ask him about generalized anxiety disorder. Ask him about I don't know. What
Let's not get in trouble.
Yeah. I was gonna say. I guess we'll let that bit stay.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So okay. So that's kind of how I feel about the Sixers Celtics matchup in general. Mm-hmm. It is funny because, as I've said on the podcast, it does feel different this year for the Sixers. It's once again unfortunate. I think they're going to run into their toughest matchup in the second round. This is all assuming that the Sixers and the Celtics win in the first round, obviously. But I weirdly enough, like, I'm sure I'll feel terrible when it does, if it does happen, but I can't really come out of this feeling terrible in the fact that I think that if the Celtics make light work of the Sixers, or if they beat the Sixers, I think that they should be pretty. I think there's a good chance the NBA champion comes out of that series in the way that they did in the Bucks series last year. In that, even though they didn't end up winning because Steph Curry went in God mode, which you might have to. The one thing with that is you might have to get to the finals and then face like Kevin Durant. It's that's like the one scenario where it's like, well, maybe once again, maybe Tatum has a bad series, and the large majority of these series, obviously, I think this team is a little bit more diaper mode proof because you have so many different looks you can go to, and like if Jaylen Brown really was struggling in a game, and you can put in Derek White for 10 minutes or 15 minutes here and there, like that is a massive advantage that most teams don't have.
That's true, but we're also talking about a super top-heavy team with Kevin Durant and an All-NBA guard. And that's a terrible matchup for the Celtics.
If it's Celtics,
we have no proof of them being able to handle something like that in 4 games. Let's say
you had me for a second. Oh, and like a young athletic big on the back line.
Exactly. Yeah, something like that. It's just not possible.
Yeah. A point guard who you never know if he's going to be available or not. Pass first point guard, but yeah.
I made that joke and we lost like a third of our viewership. Everyone's like, "Fuck this!"
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No Celtics propaganda on the pod.
But we'll see. We'll see after tonight. We'll see pretty much all of the playoff seeding is going to be locked in within the next day. Probably at most. Obviously, there's 2 days left of the fucking season. Yeah. There's really not much else that is there. But if you guys want to hear the rest of this episode, if you are not watching on the Ball Patreon, the link is in the description for that. We also are going to talk about our All-NBA teams. We're also going to talk about Mark Cuban and the Dallas Mavericks having probably the funniest week in quite some time. And then we'll talk about some other things too. So subscribe to the Ball Patreon. The link is in the description.
Just one more thing. I will be repeating Trill's address in the Patreon, like just doxing him completely. So if you would like to know where Trill lives, stick around, smash that subscribe button, and we will get to that in the back.
I'm honestly surprised that the Miami Heat fans last night didn't when I tweeted a link to Eric Spoelstra dating his now wife. I was expecting my address to be on the timeline within an hour or two. So shout out to the Heat fans for not putting my address on the timeline. I do appreciate that. We'll wait until the playoffs for that kind of stuff.
We did see that after Trill did that, the article was edited like 4 days ago, like exactly when Trill tweeted that. Like they literally edited the article talking about his wife. So I'm just saying, stay woke. Keep your third eye open. What don't the Miami Heat want us to know?
What calls did Pat Riley make?
Yes, exactly. Just keep that one up here.
Yeah,
remember that.